Hello everybody, Daniel Canning. Yes, I'm a transition engineer. I'm the one of two in the world so far.
We can say that.
We can indeed. In fact, the first lecture about transition engineering was presented by the other transition engineer, Dr. Susan Cramdyke, in Anglia Ruskin University, and it was the inaugural lecture of the GSI, in 2011 actually. So I'm a transition engineer. I run Splendid Engineering, which is a small engineering consultancy, and I work on community energy projects, and I've done various bits of work around here. Does anyone remember the Great Notley Wind Turbine project? I was the chief engineer on that project, and I'm currently working on community ESCO projects with other communities around Essex. Now, this evening, I have just come here from a place which has had no electricity since Monday morning, and that made me realise, well, I knew already, but hopefully I can use it to illustrate to you, that so many of the systems on which we rely depend on energy. And all the systems that are brilliant, like democracy and healthcare and education and holding community stakeholder workshop group meetings, all rely on being able to depend on an energy system. So I've spent most of today visiting old people to find out who can't have a hot meal instead of preparing my talk for this evening. And I've got to go home this evening and buy 4 portions of fish and chips to feed to people in the dark. So I haven't got any slides or anything. But there's this point that everything that we do, all the good things that we aspire to and we want to do, that other people have talked about this evening, depend on complex and reliable engineering systems, and that's why engineering is so important. Now, the town of Chelmsford had enjoyed 150 years of history since the Industrial Revolution, during which every single policy decision and every single problem could be solved in the knowledge that every year we had more abundant and more cheap energy than the year before. So all the things that we do, like building universities, like having a large part of the population commute to London every day, all of those are high energy solutions. And we've had 150 years during which we can assume that energy will be reliable and affordable and abundant, no problem, okay? Apart from a little glitch in 1973, but then we found North Sea oil and then we relaxed again. The city of Chelmsford, on the other hand, will spend its entire history during a period after which we can no longer make the assumption that energy is cheap and affordable. So the city of Chelmsford will be very different from the town of Chelmsford. And again, all the things that have been spoken about this evening, like youth forums and things, are brilliant, but they all depend on the engineering systems, the infrastructure, the energy, the transport being reliable and safe and dependable, which they won't be if we don't think differently, okay? And there's this thing that Einstein said, which was that you can't solve a problem with the same thinking that caused the problem in the first place. And we've spent 150 years solving problems by using more and more energy, and we're going to have less and less energy, okay? That's what transition engineering is all about, okay? Right, so that's transition engineering, and there's a whole process of transition engineering. Now, if I were elected mayor, the first thing I would do is I would make a commitment to take the leadership head out of the leadership sand and look at the future of the city and the rural parts outside. So this evening we can sit here quite happily going about our business whilst there are 5,000 or 7,000 people in the dark. Yeah? And now there's an interesting thing about power cuts is that they also cause your heating to stop. And whilst humans have evolved to not die of the dark, on account of it gets dark every night. We do die of the cold, yeah? So, as I was saying, yes, we take the leadership head out of the sand and we will plan for the future and we create a new vision for the future based on the assumption that everything in the future is going to have to be possible with a lot less energy, much less fossil energy, much less renewable energy. So that will be the basis on which we work, and we will still work to do all those good things that other people have talked about. And there are going to be two key steps that will be taken immediately. The first two things, and they'll be to launch two task forces, if you like. There'll be one task force which will be the Engineering Risk Task Force, and this task force will look at the whole of the city and the district and undertake an energy audit, and we'll look at all of the complex systems that we depend on, like the food system, where does our food come from, the transport system, how do we get about, the health system, where are the surgeries, where are the hospitals, where are the pharmacies, where do the people live, what's the relationship between them, how do you get to the medicine in the middle of the night, that kind of thing. The education system, why do people go to which schools and how do they get there? We'll look at all of those things. We'll look at the extent to which they depend on energy and therefore the extent to which they're vulnerable to reduced energy. And I'll give you an example about this. I live almost in exactly the same place now that I lived in when I was at school. So I've lived in Chelmsford nearly 50 years. And I worked out the difference in energy demand between taking me to school when I was 5 and taking my daughter to school today. And the difference in energy demand, which is a result of all the policy decisions in the intervening years, is that it uses 80 times as much energy to get my daughter to school as it took to get me to school. 80 times as much energy. And we know that in the next 40 or so years, the total amount of energy available to us is going to go down by about 50%, at least 50%, okay? So we'll have this task force looking at vulnerabilities, and we, as the mayoral office, we will look at all those vulnerabilities and work out how we can deliver the services and the things we value in life and the systems with less energy, okay? On the second task force which will be launched, which might be chaired by either Leonie or, sorry, I've forgotten your name, Charlotte, because you've got some brilliant ideas there, will be a task force looking at a new vision, because I don't have all the answers, but we'll have a task force looking at a new vision for the city, which will work hand in hand with the energy reduction task force, and we'll look at all of the things which are good, in a very broad sense, for a city, but which are essentially not energy intensive. So we're not looking at making the town better by having more, newer, faster and bigger buses or taxis or trains. We'll be looking at things like education and strong communities and music festivals, and yes, live music definitely, and Morris dancing definitely, and the ability for people to spend time with their families and all those things that which are the building blocks of a strong, desirable and happy society which don't depend on energy intensive solutions. And those two task forces will be the basis of the policy changing process. Okay, thank you very much.